The February 1st, 2011 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
President Adair.
Here.
Miss Andrews. Mr. Antelli. Mr. Barker. Mr. Baroth. Mr. Beebe. Mr. Cassetti. Mr. Colby. Mr. Daniele. Mrs. Draw. Mr. Eckel. Mr. Esposito. Mr. Gamble. Mr. Gamina. Mr. Haney. Mr. Hanna. Mr. Hyder. Mr. Howland. Ms. Kaylee. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Monero. Mr. McCann. Mr. O'Brien. Dr. Quattro. Mr. Rocco. Mr. Tucciarello. Mrs. Valerio. Mr. Yolovich.
Please stay seated at this time. I would like to introduce the Reverend Norm Tank of the Blessed Kittery Parish at Christ the King Church, who's been invited today by Legislator Vincent Esposito.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Merciful God, creator and sustainer of our lives, reconciler, and source of all harmony and peace in the human community. As darkness comes to our days and storms roll across our sky, this legislature gathers to fulfill its duty and exercise its responsibility to govern and guide the good and well-being of our county and of all its residents. Through the will of the people, you have entrusted to this body the stewardship of our human, financial, and natural resources, given into their hands the care and protection of the poor and the vulnerable, and called them to create from the rich diversity of our people in our county a community and society that honors and respects the rights and freedoms of all. Give them now insight that they need to vision our future, the strength they need to fashion a good and even better life for us, and the courage they need to make right choices for the sake of the common good. Although there are differences and disagreements among us, we are blessed that this body and all civil authorities in our nation govern in relative peace and tranquility. While we pray for respect and safety for all who govern among us, we recognize that there are places in the world where governments are in crisis and people are denied basic human rights, freedoms, humane housing, adequate nourishment. Look with mercy on all who struggle to bring about the justice and lasting peace of your kingdom. As this night advances and as we prepare ourselves for another storm, we pray for the safety and well-being of all who will be affected, especially those who serve and protect us and respond to our emergencies, those who tend our streets and highways, the poor and the homeless, and those who offer them shelter and food. And grant that when the work of this assembly is completed this evening, that all may return safely to their homes and loved ones. Merciful and compassionate one, we make this prayer for our good and for your glory. Amen.
Reverend Tank. Reverend. Reverend. Thank you. On behalf of the whole legislature, I want to give you a certificate. Okay. Thank you. Legislator Calvin Lee Jr. will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Legislator Lee. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. Without objection, we will now take agenda item number 24 out of regular order. Agenda item number 24 is moved by Mr. Quattro, seconded by Mr. O'Brien. Will the clerk please read the resolution memorial for Douglas P. Rocco, brother of legislator Michael J. Rocco.
Expressing regret of the Monroe County Legislature on the recent passing of Douglas P. Rocco. Be it resolved that the Monroe County Legislature hereby expresses its deep sympathy at the recent passing of Douglas P. Rocco, brother of Monroe County Legislator Michael J. Rocco, And whereas Doug passed away at age 43 on January 11th, 2011. And whereas Doug was a graduate of the college at Brockport with a bachelor's degree in communications, pursuing a career in vending, and quickly moving into the field of sales, where he worked as a vice president of sales at Iron Age Corporation, and later as a territory manager for the Buffalo Rochester Division of Safety Solutions. And whereas Doug was known as a devoted father to his kids, serving as a team coach, co-coach, or as a spectator to support his kids' sporting activities. Doug was also known for working with the youth in the community through Tri-County youth hockey groups. And whereas Doug is survived by his 3 children, Haley, Alec, and Avery, his parents, David and Mary Lou, his brothers, William and Michael, his nieces, Stephanie and Jennifer, his nephews, Brian and Matthew, mother of his children, Kimberly, his uncle, Dwayne, and many cousins and family members. Whereas Doug will long be remembered for his friendly nature and his contributions to our community. And be it further resolved that the clerk of the legislature is hereby requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the bereaved family.
You've received your copies of the Journal of Day 1, January 11th, 2011. Without exception, the journal stands approved as submitted. At this time, I would like to invite our county horticulturist, Mark Quinn, to come up and present to us tonight the plant or flower of the month.
Good evening. Plant of the month this month is cyclamen. We chose this because there's actually a really beautiful midwinter display of cyclamen in Lamberton Conservatory in Monroe County Parks. So I hope you all have a chance to go out and see it. Just a few facts about the cyclamen. There's about 23 different species of cyclamen. This is the most common one you see. Regularly, it's a florist cyclamen, Cyclamen persicum. They're very nice plants. It kind of likes cool weather. It's the plant that you want if you want to maintain your heat in your house the way you should, because if it gets much higher than about 68, it really doesn't like it in the house. Likes that night setback. It probably likes it in the mid-50s at night. So this plant's really kind of taking care of your energy in your house. It likes bright sunlight, bright light, but not direct sunlight. So a south-facing window might be a little bit too bright. You might want to put it in a west or an east-facing window so it doesn't get a lot of direct sun. They bloom for a very long time if they're well cared for. You need to make sure that you don't put too much water on them. You let them dry out and then water them again. They've actually got, it's a tuber. It's kind of like a potato that they grow out of. And if those things stay wet for too long, they'll rot. So they're a little touchy to take care of, but if you take care of them well, they bloom for a long period of time. They're beautiful. We've got a number of colors. They come in reds, purples, whites. And this is, like I say, is the florist variety. There actually are a few hardy varieties out there. They're much smaller, but there's 2 or 3 different varieties that actually would grow in the Rochester area. This would die if you planted it outside. It would probably do okay in about Virginia and south of there, but here it won't take the frost. So anyway, it's a beautiful plant. They're very available out there, and I hope people have the opportunity to come to Lamberton Conservatory and see the great selection of cyclamen we have in bloom right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. And I also noticed that we have kept some of our plants from last month, which is very nice.
We kept a couple of the plants from last month only because the cyclamen are kind of short, so we wanted to leave a little height here. So
Perfect. Great. Thank you. There's a hearing loop in place tonight to assist those who are hearing impaired. Anyone requiring assistance should inquire at the clerk's office.
If you have a cellular phone, pager, or other electronic device in your possession, we would request that you make it inaudible for the duration of the meeting. And thank you for your cooperation.
Legislators, the referrals submitted to the legislature for the next committee cycle are in your folders. This evening we have 2 presentations and several proclamations scheduled. At this time, I would like to call upon County Executive Maggie Brooks to please come forward. Madam Clerk.
Thank you and good evening. And I would like Christopher Patino and Mustafa Saeed, if they could join me up here at the podium. I think they might be in the hall, getting their pictures taken. Christopher and Mustafa, would you like to come on up here? Please, yes. Come on up and stand right here. Thank you and welcome. Tonight, I am proud to gather here with all of you as we publicly recognize and thank two extraordinary young members of our community, two juniors at Rush Henrietta High School who on January 25th, 2011, went from being students to heroes. On that night, Christopher Patino and Mustafa Saeed were shopping in their neighborhood Wegmans when they heard a scream. Without hesitation and without regard to their own safety, they ran towards the sound and they witnessed a brutal attack. 17-year-old Nicole Bean was being stabbed by a 19-year-old boyfriend. Christopher and Mustafa immediately did what they could do to stop the vicious assault. Christopher used physical force to fend off the attacker. Mustafa's hand was severely cut. Nicole Bean was badly hurt, but she is alive. Because of these two good Samaritans, her attacker is in jail awaiting justice. January 25th started out as an ordinary day for Christopher Patino and Mustafa Saeed. But that night, their extraordinary actions, their quick, decisive response to help a fellow human being in trouble, captured the attention and the hearts of the citizens of Monroe County. So on behalf of a grateful Monroe County community, I want to publicly thank both of you for your courage, your compassion, and for putting service above self. And we have two ways to pay tribute and thank you with tonight. First of all, we have a piece of art that was done by a local company, Klein Steel, and this is an appreciation for your heroic efforts on January 25th, 2011. Congratulations. Some proud family members here as well. We also have a proclamation for each of you. This proclamation was generously donated and mounted and displayed by Lamont Awards and Trophies in Spencerport, and they did this especially for these two young men here today. And we're going to ask our legislature clerk to please read the proclamation.
On any day, Christopher Patino and Mustafa Saeed are two close friends who are juniors at Rush Henrietta High School. No one could predict that a trip to the candy aisle at the Wegmans Food Market on Calkins Road in the town of Henrietta would suddenly forever change the lives of these two young adults. In an instant, Christopher and Mustafa would find themselves heroes to a family of one of their peers and become an inspiration to the residents of Monroe County. On January 25th, 2011, while Christopher and Mustafa were shopping, the two young men heard screams from around a nearby aisle. In chilling detail, Mustafa explained to Monroe County Sheriff's deputies that both young men heard cries for help coming from a young woman who was being brutally attacked. Reacting quickly to what was happening, Christopher Patino managed to separate the victim from her assailant, while Mustafa Saeed fended off two attacks from the suspect. Both young men protected and tended to the victim by taking her away to the safety of a nearby aisle and waiting for emergency responders to arrive. Without question, if it were not for the heroic actions from these two upstanding and selfless individuals, the outcome of this horrible attack could have been much worse. Both Christopher and Mustafa exemplify the very best of our community, and we are all very proud to call them friend and neighbor. Therefore, we, Maggie Brooks, Monroe County Executive, and Jeffrey Adair, Monroe County Legislature President, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, February 1st, 2011, to be Christopher Patino and Mustafa Saeed Day in Monroe County, and thank both these young men for their heroic actions when they were needed most. Congratulations.
Well, thank you for all coming. You know, it's really nice. Everybody here is too kind. We never expected this many people. Wow.
This was really unexpected. We're just glad that the girl's okay and everything is going good.
Well, I guess y'all don't have too many heroes in Rochester. I mean, but wow, y'all did a lot for us. I mean, I'm glowing right now. I mean, really can't help it. I can't stop the smile. What we did was something brave. Everybody should know that by now. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Well, we just want to thank everybody for all they have done, these awards, and we're happy to be here, and we'll never forget this moment.
Yeah, because we have our own day. I'm a Democrat also.
Whoops. Oh.
That's all we had to say, I guess. Not really much. Thank you all for coming. I mean, it really means a lot to us. Wow. Wow. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Go on. Thank you. Hey guys, here's the boxes for the plaques, okay? So just here. All right, good. Thanks, you guys. Yeah, do you need some?
Sure, I can do that.
This. What's this? Perfect. There you go. Never gotten that reaction before. Oh, wow. Thanks, guys.
Would the Webster Marching Band please come forward? Also, legislators Carmen Gamina, Dan Quattro, and President Jeffrey R. Adair.
Got it, Case.
The Webster Marching Band's dedication and musical talent drove them to success at the National Outback Bowl Festival. These incredible musicians placed first in the top division of the competition and were named Grand Champions. And whereas, under the leadership and guidance of band director Brian Wilt, these band members, including students from Webster Thomas and Webster Schroeder High Schools and Willink and Spry Middle Schools, earned the honor to perform as part of the nationally televised pregame show of the Outback Bowl. And whereas the competition was stiff as 24 bands from 15 states competed for the honor to perform live. Not only was the band successful in the competition, their color guard was named the best color guard of the competition as well. This was quite an accomplishment for the marching band in their first appearance at the Outback Bowl. And whereas we are confident that they will continue to be model citizens for the Webster community and Monroe County as a whole. We congratulate you on reaching such an impressive milestone and wish you continued success in the future. Now therefore, we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, E. Daniel Quattro, Majority Leader, District 15, and Carmen F. Gamina, Legislator, District 8, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Webster Marching Band on their impressive first-place victory at the National Outback Bowl Festival. Congratulations.
On behalf of all the families from the Webster Marching Band, the Webster School District, and the staff educational team, we just want to say thank you for everyone for your support. It's been a tremendous journey, and hopefully we can continue moving forward in the direction that we went this year. And again, just thank you for all your support.
Would Josephine M. Perini from the Rochester International Council please come forward? Also, County Executive Maggie Brooks and President Jeffrey R. Adair.
Well, what an exciting evening. I should come here more often because my favorite flower is a cyclamen. In my country, where my parents came from, northern Italy, they grow wild. They're only tiny like this, but they're all over the place. Good evening, folks. My name is Josephine Perini. I'm the president of the board of the Rochester International Council and also the director of the International Visitor Leadership Program. Judy Weinstein, who is the executive director, is going to give you some brochures to tell you about the Rochester International Council, because perhaps some of you may be interested in joining us, and it tells you how to do that in the brochure. Actually, RIC started some 50 years ago to promote international understanding and to bring our community together with international students at the universities and international delegations that come to the United States under the auspices of the Department of State. The International Visitors Leadership Program, which I believe you have a sheet in that was given to you, is the premier professional exchange program designed to build mutual understanding between the United States and other countries through carefully designed visits that reflect the participants' professional interests. And for the past 8 years, I have been volunteering with the State Department to prepare these programs for the delegations that come to Rochester. Now, topics may include certainly government, which is why we're here, NGOs, courts, women leadership, HIV/AIDS, interfaith dialogue, and so on. So whatever the theme or topic is, for example, in a couple of weeks I have one of a delegation of 10 men from Saudi Arabia coming. They're all ministers of education, so their focus is on education. And the week after that I have a delegation of 6 women from Haiti coming for women leadership. Every year, the Rochester International Council identifies an organization that has given outstanding service to the International Visitor Leadership Program. At our awards dinner in May, we presented the award to Monroe County. Now, numerous county departments have met with 22 different delegations. In addition, the county executive has met with a few delegations, even one that I recall sharing the Monroe County cookbook. Various legislators have also met, including Mary Valerio and Carrie Andrews and perhaps others. Tonight, we're presenting the Certificate of Appreciation to the Department of Monroe County, which comes from the United States Department of State. So if folks may want to come forward, I will read this to you. It says, the Office of International Visitors, United States Department of State Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, awards this Certificate of Appreciation to Monroe County in recognition for your exceptional contributions to the Rochester International Council and the Department of State's International Visitor Leadership Program by sharing your time and professional experience with International Visitor Leadership Program participants. And it's the Director of the International Office, Alma Candelaria, who has signed this. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would the Urban Fellows, Frank Coloratolo, Erica Messner, and David Widazinski please come forward? Also, Legislator Willie Joe Lightfoot and President Jeffrey R. Adair. Whereas the Rochester Urban Fellows Program at the University of Rochester is a unique 10-week summer program that links students with community-based organizations and agencies in the area. With an emphasis on civic engagement, the program promotes learning about urban issues and encourages a celebration and appreciation of multicultural topics and urban life. And whereas each year Urban Fellows works with agencies that focus on a variety of issues, such as healthcare, education, public safety, women's issues, economic development, youth, faith-based, and housing. Last year, 22 students participated in fellowship for 4 days a week with organizations such as the Greater Rochester Enterprise, Food Link, NeighborWorks Rochester, Habitat for Humanity, Anthony Jordan Medical Center, Jefferson Family Medicine, and Writers in Books to immerse themselves in neighborhood issues. And whereas fellows are always encouraged to participate in cultural events and activities in the community, as well as volunteer for various activities and projects outside of the realm of their individual fellowships. In May of 2010, Frank Coloratolo, Erica Messner, and David Widazinski met with Legislator Lightfoot and U of R Community Relations Assistant Director Colleen McCarthy to begin discussing the creation of an informative website that for the Jefferson Avenue neighborhood and its stakeholders. It was decided that the main purpose of the website would be to create an online presence that could become a source of information by including current updates on the revitalization project, a history and articles about the neighborhood, and an easily updated community events calendar, a blog, a local spotlight section, and various links to community groups, elected officials, and services. And whereas, having completed their fellowships, these urban fellows have gained a comprehensive understanding of the issues facing urban neighborhoods in the city of Rochester. They have helped contribute to the fabric of the Jefferson Avenue neighborhood by creating a convenient, informative, and centralized location that spreads awareness and highlights of a community experiencing a rebirth. Now therefore let it be known that we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, and Willie Joe Lightfoot, Legislator District 27, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby honor Urban Fellows Frank Coloratolo, Erica Messner, and David Widazinski for their work supporting the revitalization of the Jefferson Avenue neighborhood. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was definitely an honor to participate both in the Urban Fellows program and in the creation of this website. It was just a really fun opportunity, and we really hope that it does contribute a lot to the Jefferson Avenue project. So.
Would representatives from the Notre Dame Learning Center please come forward? Also, Legislator Cynthia Cayley and President Jeffrey R. Adair. Whereas the School Sisters of Notre Dame began as a small congregation in Bavaria, now part of Germany, in 1833, when Caroline Gerdhardinger provided free tutoring to young, impoverished girls in small towns and villages. The order quickly grew and spread to areas across Europe. In 1847, Caroline and her fellow volunteers brought their order to North America, establishing themselves among German immigrant communities in Pennsylvania, New York, and Maryland. Whereas the first School Sisters of Notre Dame came to Rochester in 1848, and Mother Caroline opened St. Joseph Orphanage, Elementary School, and Business School in 1854. As the years passed, the sisters were invited to teach at schools like Holy Ghost, St. Margaret Mary, Bishop Kearney, and many others, while also offering their services to underserved children in Rochester. Over time, schools closed and the sisters moved to other ministries around the country, but because of loyal supporters and the long-standing foundation of sisters in the area, the Notre Dame Learning Center was opened at the Charles Settlement House in Rochester in 2004. And whereas the Learning Center is a sponsored ministry by the School Sisters of Notre Dame of the Atlantic Midwest Province. The Notre Dame Learning Center's mission is to enable children and adults in the city of Rochester to reach their fullest potential through education in English language arts, reading, mathematics, and technology. The sisters welcome and encourage all to take advantage of the opportunities offered, which creates an environment that helps an individual develop as a person and learn skills necessary for further education and employment. And whereas, for over 150 years, the School Sisters of Notre Dame have been providing residents of Rochester with free tutoring and guidance. The Notre Dame Learning Center has been established to carry on the heritage of the pioneer sisters by enhancing lifelong learning skills and building self-confidence in members of our community. Now, therefore, let it be known that we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, and Cynthia Cayley, Legislator, District 28, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby honor the Notre Dame Learning Center for their dedication to educating the young and impoverished members of our community. Congratulations.
All I want to do is ask you to raise your hand if you were taught by the School Sisters of Notre Dame at St. Michael's or any of these places. Thank you. And thank you for spurring us on in education as we will continue for, we hope, another 150 years in Rochester. Thank you.
Would representatives from the Jefferson High School Interact Club please come forward? Also, Legislator Cindy Cayley and President Jeffrey R. Adair. Hi guys, you want to line up in the front? Whereas in February 2010, a group of students at Jefferson High School formed an Interact Club to learn leadership skills and help impoverished families in other counties. 1 year later, the 22-member club is comprised of members who are all refugee students from Burma, Nepal, Thailand, Somalia, the Congo, and other Asian and African countries in grades 8 through 12. And whereas Interact is one of the most significant and fastest growing programs of Rotary International, nearly 200,000 young people around the world are involved in clubs, abiding by the Rotarian model of service above self. And whereas the club's first project was to plant vegetable seedlings at the Jefferson High School greenhouse for the urban garden on Lexington Avenue, and sunflowers to be sold to the public to help raise money for Heifer International. They ended up growing more than 4,000 vegetable seedlings and sold over $1,200 of sunflowers that helped purchase an animal for a family in Thailand. And whereas for the past 12 months, club members have learned skills and that further their fundraising goals and have participated in training to help others. Several club members have been trained by the Rochester Transit Authority to help newly arriving refugees navigate the Rochester bus system. And whereas last fall, the club achieved world recognition in Rotary circles by winning an international YouTube contest describing their group and the causes they have taken up. With volunteer help from AmeriCorps, Nazareth College, and a borrowed video camera, the Jefferson Rotary Interact video beat submissions from 14 different nations. The desire of these young people to gain useful life skills and their willingness to help one another has brought pride and the international spotlight to our community. Now, therefore, let it be known that we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, and Cynthia Cayley, Legislator, District 28, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby honor the Jefferson High School Interact Club for their dedication to local and international service and for bringing recognition to the area on the occasion of their 1-year anniversary. Congratulations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed Elias, and I'm president of Interact Club in Thomas Jefferson High School. And this is past president of Interact Club. Now all these are my member of clubs. Thank you very much, everyone.
I'm an old president. Last year, there's a new member. We have more. Last year we have more than this. We make a lot of different. I don't know what I gotta say. Thank you so much.
Okay, members that are here this evening are Idris Kinyane, he's from Sudan, and Tida Tue from Thailand, and Jureina, and Shaida, and Mowazo, oh, I get it wrong every time, and Josephine, and Elise, and Emmeline. And I am so proud. I'm the staff advisor for the club from Jefferson, and I'm joined this evening with our administrator, Ms. Sickles, assistant principal, and we are so proud of the members of this club. They have worked so hard. We planted the vegetables from seeds, and we were in there every day. There were teams of students watering and replanting and replanting and watering, and then teams of students who went to the public market and sold the sunflowers as a fundraiser. So through a lot of hard work and good ideas and teamwork, they've done more than I would have ever imagined when I first became the advisor of the club. And then we were first place in the YouTube contest, and that just blew me away. So anyway, it's been a real pleasure working with them, and thank you so very much. We are very honored to receive this.
You have in your folders the approved minutes from the last cycle. There are no formal committee reports scheduled for this evening. We'll now hold a public forum. We have 8 people registered to address the legislature. Madam Clerk.
A deputy will assist you in approaching the lectern. Please use the center aisle and come forward when your name is called. Each speaker will have 2 minutes in which to address the body, and please conclude when the timer sounds and exit through the back of the chambers. Thank you for your cooperation. Our first speaker will be Martin Shute. Please come forward.
My name is Martin Shute. I'm a fruit grower here in Penfield, New York, and I'd like to thank all of our legislators for coming down and enjoying our reception, which you had a chance to taste some of the crops and things that we grow in New York, or right here in Monroe County. In this initiative, I'd like to take a minute and thank you for all of your support, the support that you give us through educating our youth through Monroe Community College and allowing us to have new and expanded programs each year. I'd also like to thank you for the cooperative extension, which allows our farmers that are pre-existing with the educational needs that they need in which to advance themselves. Your initiative in keeping property taxes at a low rate also helps our agricultural community to survive in this area. We also would like to thank you for providing us with the markets, the regional market, the Rochester Public Market, and all the county markets that we have where we can promote well-being and obesity programs and try and educate people in the way of the proper way to eat. We also would like to tell you that we favor the southern route of 531, in which that would be the least environmentally impact. It would allow agricultural prime land in which to still exist. With all that said, I would like to take this time and say, keep up doing the good work. Agriculture and the Monroe County legislators, we all have one common goal, and that is to see Monroe County grow, and also we would like to thank you for helping us.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Safuto.
Good evening, everybody. Don't we have some wonderful young people in this county? Well, as you all know, my name is Chris Safuto, and in case you don't know, I'm the president of CSEA Unit 7400, the Monroe County Employees Union. Each month I've come before you to share some information about the hardworking men and women of Monroe County who make it possible for you and I to carry on our day-to-day lives. This month, I am so pleased to hear that some of the legislators paid a visit to the Van Laer treatment plant out on Lakeshore Boulevard. I understand that some of you are even able to touch the runoff water that will eventually end up in Lake Ontario. It's wonderful to know that the men and women who run the facility are Monroe County employees. This 24-hour operation makes sure that the sewage system in Monroe County continues to do the job that it was built to do over 150 years ago. These employees test water for various companies, make sure that any of the runoff water is within regulations of the EAP before it goes into our waterways. In the summertime, they work in conditions that are not very pleasant, but you know what? They show up every day. They do their job with pride and dedication, and because of that, Monroe County works because we do. Good evening.
Our next speaker is Todd Wersinger. Todd Wersinger.
President Adair and distinguished legislators, my name is Todd Wersinger. I'm a senior probation officer for Monroe County and the CSEA probation section president. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I've talked to you before about probation staffing deficits and the threat to public safety. Sadly, in 2011, 2 of the 4 homicide suspects in the city of Rochester were active probationers. During difficult economic times, public employees seem to become the scapegoats for economic ills. I can assure you that none of the people I work with created self-destructive mortgage lending. We were too busy being responsible for approximately 7,000 active cases. Many of these cases involved the victimization of your constituents and detriment to the quality of life in Monroe County. In 2010, our warrant staff served 1,369 warrants. In November, while serving a warrant, officers Carr, Root, and I, with our impact partners, located a wanted person in a bedroom off a narrow hallway. The subject attempted to close the door on Officer Carr, who immediately responded to attempt to place the subject under arrest. It took 3 of us and 2 sheriff's deputies to bring the subject under control. Within 1 foot of where the subject was handcuffed, we located an assault rifle loaded with 27 rounds. Propped up against the subject's door frame was a 7.62 by 54 rifle loaded with body armor-piercing steel-tip bullets. I have participated in 283 searches in response to information that active probationers pose a threat to our community. Since 2007, our search team has seized 126 weapons, including assault rifles, 42 handguns, 2 of them tied to homicides, 14,587 rounds of ammunition, a half pound of cocaine, 17 pounds of marijuana, and 1/2 ounce of heroin. I'm almost done. May I continue, sir? We have probationers in every district you represent. Every day our officers do remarkable work on behalf of the citizens of Monroe County. We have done our part for the county with unsafe staffing levels and a top salary that averages $8,800 less than comparable counties. On behalf of all probation officers, we ask only for a fair contract. Thank you very much for your time.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth Milliken.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the County Legislature, and guests. My name is Elizabeth Milliken. I'm better known as Bizza. I've been a resident of Brighton for 43 years. What I want to address tonight is redistricting. I make a plea to you, voting members in particular, to ignore the vote of the January 24th Agenda Charter Committee regarding this topic and vote in favor of an independent commission to draw the Monroe County legislative districts. I use the town of Brighton for illustration. There are 46 election districts in Brighton. There are currently 4 county legislative districts in Brighton, whose population as of the 2000 census was 35,588. Here's the legislative district breakdown. LD 14 has 29 Brighton EDs and pretty much covers central Brighton. It also covers a part of Henrietta. Legislative District 15 has 4 EDs in East Brighton and also covers part of Penfield and Webster. LD 23 is north of LD 15, has 5 Brighton EDs and covers part of the city. LD 24 has 8 Brighton EDs, and this one's really very interesting. There are 5 in north central Brighton and 3 in far west Brighton. This legislative district also covers part of the city. What I would ask you to do is to keep this mental image in mind as you vote on redistricting. And if Brighton is typical of the rest of Monroe County, ask yourself, is gerrymandering really fair to the Monroe County voting public? And then I'm assuming your intelligent answer will be no. So you will vote to create an independent redistricting commission. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ovi Overmeyer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ovi Overmeyer, and I stand before you today to speak as a Monroe County resident, as a taxpayer of this area. And I want to address one thing that I didn't have an opportunity to do last time in January, and that is to say that it's time to end the partisan divide that we call county government. As a prime example, 3 county legislators voted against independent redistricting in the Agenda Charter Committee last week. While unsurprising, I'm extremely disappointed in our legislators' actions. I look forward to the day when you can look your own constituents in the eye and tell them that they are more important to you than your own political affiliation. I know most of you personally and individually, I'm sure you all want to do the right thing, but unfortunately your collective identity won't let you do that. That's a shame, and that's got to change. This reform we are talking about is not a Democrat, conservative, or Republican issue. It is overwhelmingly supported by people from all walks of life for all levels of government, except, of course, here in our very own county government. By not implementing this reform, this is just another prime example of local petty politics trumping the greater good. Redistricting reform is needed to ensure transparency of the process and to provide a more meaningful opportunity for effective public participation. Voters should choose our elected representatives, not the other way around. I have read every word of the proposal to create an independent, nonpartisan panel, and I know that I'm just one of hundreds of people who wholeheartedly support this effort. I also think that the citizens of Monroe County deserve fair and equal representation. Not voting for a fair process is inextricably undemocratic and just plain ugly. But hey, just remember, these decisions would be part of your voting record for eternity. Eliminating gerrymandering is something that everyone should be getting behind, and I'm very tired of this argument that says that if Democrats were in the majority, this wouldn't be an issue. Well, I guess if you're a hammer, everything you see is a nail. And also, I'm here to tell you that if Republicans were in the minority, I would still be up here talking to you about this initiative. Again, it's not a Republican issue, a conservative issue, or a Democratic issue. So I'm asking you, and I'm pleading with you, work across the aisle and pass this reform. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next speaker is Mac McGonigal.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody in the legislature for this opportunity to speak, and I speak similar to the last gentleman as a nonpartisan Monroe County taxpayer. And I decided in 2011, as I told Mr. Quattro outside a little while ago, I'm going to tone down the emotion a little. So I decided to look at the Webster Dictionary today, and what I did was I looked at 2 definitions that I by the way, my position here is that I would like a vote for a bipartisan redistricting, similar to the last gentleman. The two words that I chose were partisan. So most of what I'm reading here is not my words. This is just right out of the dictionary. A firm adherent to a party, faction, cause, or person, especially one exhibiting blind, prejudiced, and unreasoning allegiance. Synonyms: biased, one-sided, prejudiced. They also have a section in the dictionary called related words. Hostile, unfriendly, unsympathetic, distorted, misrepresented, shaded, warped, influenced, persuaded, predisposed, prepossessed, and swayed. The opposites, the antonyms, under partisan is equal, equitable, even-handed, fair, impartial, neutral, nonpartisan, objective, unbiased, and unprejudiced. The next word that I looked up that I also thought was appropriate for this discussion is honorable. We know that the title for each of you legislators is, honorable. Dan Quattro and Vinny Esposito, he's an honorable person. So I decided that honorable was a good choice to talk about also. So the definition of honorable per the Webster Dictionary is worthy of honor and high respect, estimable, creditable. I won't be too much longer. Synonyms are decent, ethical, honest, just, noble, principled, respectable, righteous, stand up, upright, upstanding. The related word section is blameless, guiltless, irreproachable, unassailable, unimpeachable, chivalrous, classy, high-minded, right-minded, conscientious, fair, good, incorruptible, moral, reputable, respected, scrupulous, uncorrupted, virtuous, decorous, nice, polite, proper, and seemly. Those are all the related words. There's quite a few. The opposites, antonyms, are dishonest, dishonorable, ignoble, low, unethical, unjust, unprincipled, unrighteous, and unworthy. So I guess what I'm asking here is I have just two questions for the legislatures to think about relative to this debate. First question is, what were the overriding qualities that your constituents used when deciding to vote for you? What would your constituents expect you to live up to your title in honorable? And finally, use this decision as a chance to send a message of cooperation to a concerned community. Thanks for your time.
Our next speaker is Ron Pettengill.
My name is Ron Pettengill. I live at 84 Westover Drive in Webster. And I just have a very simple request. I'm requesting that the Agenda Charter Committee explain why independent redistricting is not a good bill for the voters and the citizens of our county. I also am requesting a roll call vote on what is being voted upon this evening. Thank you.
And our last speaker is Tom Gregory.
I think that government governs best when government is left to government to do what it does best. We have expertise in this legislative chamber. Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Quattro, Mr. President Adair, you all have copies of a preliminary report basically on redistricting. If there's any questions you have, I'd be glad to hear from you at my P.O. box, if that'd be okay. One of the things we don't recognize is that since 1965, when the Democrat commissioner was the first person to actually, we drew from his plan to do the first redistricting, dividing up our county into 14 and 14 and one blended district. We didn't look to the Republican side. The Republicans had the majority, I believe, at that time. We looked to competence and capability, and the man who was a Democrat commissioner was recognized as one of the astute scholars in the area of basically the kind of geographics or looking at to do this job. In fact, the ironic thing is he said he was surprised himself that they selected his plan. He expected partisanship. It wasn't there. The same Democrat commissioner put together the next plan. Ironically, in I think it was 1980, when the Republicans actually built the plan that they put together cost them two legislative groups. They lost power. In 1990, we look at the problems in 1990 when the Democrat has a majority again. And what ends up happening is that we have the electorate of the county of Monroe rejects the plan that they submitted, a gerrymandered plan, if you look at it on its face. Bottom line is that we can go back and forth and say, and point fingers and say, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. Bottom line is we have always come up with plans that meet the court challenges, they fit, they work. The courts haven't said that these are gerrymandered plans. The citizens one time did. But every plan that we put together has been pretty good. And to take it and put it off into a group of individuals under the charge that these people don't do their job well, without any real evidence of that, other than a charge, I think shows a lack of responsibility on our own parts. The government has done a good job. Let them do what they do well. Thank you.
This concludes the public forum.
We will now proceed with the considerations of motions, resolutions, and notice. Will the clerk please read the next item on the agenda?
Item number 1, referral 11-0002.
Moved by Legislator Yolovich, second by Legislator Holland. Is there any discussion at this time? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week at the Agenda Charter Committee, we had a lengthy discussion about the issue of reapportionment, which we are required to do every 10 years after the census, which means we're required to do it now. I'll try not to repeat all of the arguments and discussions that we had at that committee meeting tonight, but I would like to make some important points, seeing as how this is the first time that the full body will take action on this important issue. Last week at Agenda Charter, we considered two separate proposals on the issue of redistricting. One was to continue the current partisan redistricting process that has led time and time again to political abuse, otherwise known as gerrymandering. The other was a proposal I sponsored to reform the process to create an independent commission. Unfortunately, the three majority members of the Agenda Charter Committee chose to maintain the status quo, and therefore the referral before us would name a 5-member commission to reapportion our district lines going into this year. Supporters of this process have called it bipartisan. Yet it is comprised of 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. It does meet the technical definition of bipartisan. But it is not truly bipartisan. Make no mistake, the referral before us will name a partisan process to continue the long-standing tradition of gerrymandering and having district lines drawn at party headquarters with one single priority: to maximize the political advantage of the current majority. That's it. Districts will be created using voter registration data to create more or as safe Republican districts as possible, and consequently also more and as safe Democratic districts as possible. This will continue the lack of competition and accountability in our general elections, which will further reduce the already negligible incentive to work collaboratively across the aisle once we're elected. And this will further exacerbate the polarized divide in this body, in our community, and in our country. That's what our political system will create if we don't reform it and push back from time to time to do what our community wants or deserves to have better government. For that reason, as some of the speakers alluded to today and at previous meetings, we've had an overwhelming public support of an independent process to reform the way we draw redistricted lines. We've had a coalition of various community organizations. We've had petitions signed by nearly 800 residents, and we've had poll after poll show that that's what people want. In fact, I've talked to hundreds of citizens in the past few months on this issue. Save one person that we just heard from, and many of the legislators on the other side of the aisle, I can find no one that thinks we should continue the current process as it is today. Furthermore, I have not spoken to anyone who doesn't want to see reform at the state and federal level. To suggest that the same abuses that occur at the state and federal level do not occur at the county level, that person is either kidding themselves or they are a hypocrite. For several months, I have reached out since last summer to each and every one of my colleagues in this body to try to find a way to reform the process that we all know is abused. Some of you have engaged in reasonable conversation and taken a genuine interest in trying to think about ways in which we might do that. Yet none of my majority colleagues has been willing to publicly support a very simple proposal to remove the politics and our conflict of interest from drawing the legislative boundaries that represent the people of Monroe County, not the legislators of Monroe County. And over that same time, despite repeated offers, none of my majority colleagues have taken up an offer to modify my proposal to something else. So we're here today with this referral before us.
Not to talk about his proposal.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. President. I will get right to my point. This was a prelude to the fact that I do not believe that the Commission should be appointed at this time, since I believe the issue of redistricting is far more important and has far more support in the public for a reformed process than just to leave it to a vote of 3 members in a committee. And since I find it inconceivable that there aren't 15 people in this body that believe the current process needs no change whatsoever, I'm going to move to amend the referral before us to replace the appointing of the Commission with a change in the process by which the Commission is named. I won't read the entire amendment, but I'd like it passed out at this time, and I'll just list the main points and then ask for a second. The amended proposal would expand the Commission to 8 members, 4 appointed by each party in this body. It would require that districts have a maximum deviation of 1% to keep in the spirit of the one-man, one-vote federal requirement. It would require that the Commission respect village, small town, and city neighborhood boundaries where possible, and also large town boundaries also where possible, even if that town exceeds the number of people that would be in a legislative district. It would require the Commission create districts compact and contiguous as possible. It would require at least 2 public hearings on the Commission's plan, and it would take 5 votes out of the 8 members to pass it to the legislature, where it would still require legislative approval, but could not be modified by this body. It would also establish more specific time frames, given the extremely truncated period we have to draw district boundaries from when the census data is published. And most importantly, it would prohibit the use of any voter registration data, party enrollment and voting history in particular, when those are clearly the paramount issues used to draw the lines now. At this point, I'd like to ask for a second and then make a few more brief comments to this amendment.
Mr. President.
Second on the floor of the amendment, and now your point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This motion is out of order. According to the rules of this body, in fact, our charter, no proposed adoption, amendment, or rescission of a rule shall be acted upon by the legislature unless it shall have been reported upon favorably by the Agenda Charter Committee. The motion is clearly out of order, and as such, should not be considered.
I believe that to be true.
Mr. President, to the point of order, we offer amendments frequently in this body, and it's entirely appropriate to offer an amendment which would only make stronger and better the main motion that's on the table.
Okay. I'm going to reject your point of order. I'm going to accept your point of order.
To the point of order?
I'm speaking right now, okay? And then you can speak, okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to address that. I'm going to deny your point of order. I'm going to accept yours because it is clear that on the charter, it does say that it has to go through Agenda Charter. Now the legislator has to do it.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I certainly would like to appeal your ruling for the simple reason that before we appoint the commission, I believe the full body should vote on whether or not it wants to change the
Point of
process
order.
by which the commission is appointed.
Roll call vote, Mr. President, on the point of order.
Thank you.
This amendment did come to agenda charter.
And it failed.
But I mean, I think we've met the definition in the charter.
Clearly, the definition has not been met, Mr. President, because the amendment was not voted on favorably by agenda charter. Roll call vote on the point of order.
Vote on a roll call vote on the point of order.
Yes sustains the ruling of the chair. Mr. Quattro. Mr. O'Brien. Ms. Andrews. Mr. Antelli. Mr. Barker. Mr. Baroth. Mr. Beebe. Mr. Cassetti. Mr. Colby. Mr. Daniele. Mrs. Draw. Mr. Eckel. Mr. Esposito. Mr. Gamble. Mr. Gamina. Mr. Haney. Mr. Hanna. Mr. Hyder. Mr. Howland. Ms. Cayley. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Monero. Mr. McCann. Mr. Racco. Mr. Tucciarello. Mrs. Valerio. Mr. Yolovich. President Adair.
Yes.
1612, ruling of the chair is sustained.
Okay. I rule the chair of the amendment out of order.
Amendment is out of order.
Okay. Back to the main motion. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this referral indicates that it's being submitted to us pursuant to Section C2-12 of the Monroe County Charter. That section of the charter reads that, quote, such commission shall consist of the members of the County Board of Elections, the president of the county legislature, and one person selected by the legislative members of each legally constituted political party represented on the county legislature. In looking at the appointments in the referral, I am assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's Mr. Tom Fracey, Mr. Peter Quinn are representing the County Board of Elections. Yourself, Mr. President, are the president of the legislature. And then there are two other appointees, Mr. Quattro and Mr. O'Brien, who are representing the Democratic and Republican parties. Is that correct?
That is almost all correct. That Mr. O'Brien has not given me an answer and still has it as his designee up there, too.
Correct. I stand corrected. That's correct. Mr. O'Brien or his designee. In reading through the charter, the part here that caught my language in terms of the composition of the commission is that the language specifically reads, one person selected by the legislative members of each legally constituted political party represented on the county legislature. The referral before us, it appears the charter is being interpreted that there are only two legally constituted political parties represented on the county legislature, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and therefore the two appointments, Legislator Quattro and then Mr. O'Brien or his designee. I rise because I don't necessarily know if I believe that interpretation is correct of the phrase that I just read out loud. If you look at a previous section in the charter, actually this section immediately preceding the one regarding redistricting, section C2-11D, that section calls for a compensation policy commission to be established. And the language in terms of the composition of that commission reads as follows. The commission shall consist of 7 members, comprised of the following 4 members to be appointed from 6 candidates nominated by the majority party of the legislature, and 3 members to be appointed from 5 candidates nominated by the minority party of the legislature. I think that language needs to be contrasted with the language regarding the redistricting commission in section C2-12. That language, again, only refers to one person selected by the members of each legally constituted political party represented on the county legislature. Very importantly, it doesn't say representatives of the majority party or representatives of the minority party. It also doesn't say one person selected by the legislative members of both legally constituted political parties. It reads each legally constituted political party. So, Mr. President, I believe that there are actually more than 2 legally constituted political parties that are represented on the county legislature at the current time. I believe that there are 5. I think there's obviously the Democratic and Republican Party, which already have appointments to this commission. And then I believe there's the Working Families Party, the Conservative Party, and the Independence Party. There are actually 6 legally constituted political parties in New York State, but we don't have a representative of the Green Party on the current county legislature. I know I myself, when I ran for office and still today, represent the Democratic Party, the Working Families Party, and the Independence Party in this chambers. I think if the charter meant to mean only 2 political parties, it would say majority and minority, like it does very specifically in the section I read before, as well as in other appointments when it comes up, and both parties, the majority and the minority, are given appointments to various commissions and various boards. But in this case, the charter doesn't specifically say that. And so therefore, I think the interpretation has to be viewed to be more inclusive rather than less inclusive. Because if it were meant that it would be majority and minority appointments, it would clearly state so in the charter. So therefore, at this point in time, I'm going to propose an amendment to be passed out to make additional appointments to this redistricting commission pursuant to section C2-12. Because, in fact, we have legislators who are representing 3 other legally constituted political parties on the county legislature, and I believe that all 3 of those parties should also have representation on the redistricting commission. The amendment would read, pursuant to section C2-12 of the Monroe County Charter, I hereby recommend the appointment of the following persons to the Legislative District Revision Commission. The current 5 members, as already written in the referral, then the addition as, perhaps you're reading the first new appointment, Legislator Vincent J. Esposito, Conservative Party Representative, Legislator Carrie M. Andrews, Independence Party Representative, and Legislator Willie Joe Lightfoot, Working Families Party Representative.
Second, Mr. President. Point of order, Mr.
Moved by Legislator Andrews, second by Legislator Esposito. I have a point of order. Legislator Quattro.
For the very reason that the prior amendment was ruled out of order, I believe that this amendment should be ruled out of order as well.
To the point of order, if I might be heard, Mr. President.
Yes, you may.
First, although the charter would indicate that our commission plan should go through agenda charter, it doesn't preclude the ruling of amendment, the offering of an amendment, and I understand your prior ruling disagreed with me on that, although I think that was an error. But secondly, if there is a problem with the amendment in its consistency with the charter, the remedy would be at a minimum to postpone it to a reconvening of the agenda charter committee so that the omission can be
order. It's not against the point of order, so I need a ruling on your point of order, Mr. President.
Mr. President, to the point of order. Mr. President, I'm in my 6th year now serving in the county legislature. Never once have I heard of such a point of order, ruling an amendment that's being proposed to a referral that's pending before us being called out of order. Well, this is certainly not the first time that I can imagine
I believe it's
we
reasonable.
have
It's the first
proposed
time
any
we've
amendment.
considered
Excuse me, I'm talking,
redistricting,
Mr. Dr. Quattro.
I believe it's not to the point of order, so Mr. President, I would implore you to give me an answer.
Mr. President, to the point of order. For many years now, we've proposed amendments in this body that have been discussed and have not been ruled out of order simply because they did not go through the agenda charter committee. And so this is the first time we've ever heard of such an argument. The amendment has to be proposed and survive the agenda charter committee in order to be discussed here tonight. It's clearly absolutely a new argument. It's never anything that's come up before.
I'm going to rule on the point of order, and I am ruling in favor of Dr. Quattro on the point of order because he is correct on.
Appeal the ruling of the President to the legislature.
Roll call vote, Mr. President.
Dr. Quattro.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
No.
Ms. Andrews. No. Mr. Antelli. Yes. Mr. Barker. Yes. Mr. Baroth. No. Mr. Beebe. No. Mr. Cassetti. Yes. Mr. Colby. Yes. Mr. Daniele. Yes. Mrs. Draw. Yes. Mr. Eckel. No. Mr. Esposito? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Hyder? Mr. Howland? Ms. Kaylee? Mr. Lee? Mr. Lightfoot? Mr. Monero? Mr. McCann? Mr. Rocco? Mr. Tucciarello? Mrs. Valerio? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
1612, the ruling of the President is sustained. The amendment is out of order.
Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the main motion, in light of Ms. Legislator Andrews discovering that there may be an inconsistency between the language of this referral and the requirements of the county charter, I'd move that we would postpone this and have it resubmitted to the Agenda Charter Committee so there can be a determination as to whether or not Ms. Andrews' interpretation of the charter is correct. If there's a second.
I'm sorry, did I have a second on that? Moved by Legislator O'Brien, seconded by Legislator Eckel. Is there any discussion at this time? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. President. To Legislator O'Brien's motion, I'm curious if I could ask through you to the County Law Department their opinion on this reading of the charter and what's the most appropriate way to name this commission.
Through you, Mr. President, the way that I would construe the charter and to Ms. Andrews' motion would be that you have to be a member of a legally constituted party would mean a registered member. I believe that maybe these individuals were endorsed by the party. That might have been the history, but I would read this to mean that to be a member of a legally constituted political party would mean a registered member of that party. And past history of this commission does support that interpretation, and past history has indicated a member of the majority and minority party, which historically in Monroe County has been Republican and Democrat.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. President, if I may continue to the Law Department, if we take that recommendation, notwithstanding the majority's leader desire to obviously keep any debate from happening on the issue of redistricting, which faces us once every 10 years, should we take that advice and move forward and name this commission as instructed in this referral, and there is a court challenge that challenges the validity of this commission, and the court determines that your interpretation is not correct, would that not jeopardize whatever plan is drawn by that commission?
Through you, Mr. President, I'm confident that that's the correct interpretation. Obviously, any court action concerning a legislative action made here would alter the course of proceeding.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. That's the answer I expected, and the one that makes me more confident that Legislator O'Brien's motion is in order to make sure we don't expose ourselves to a process that will result in district lines that cannot be implemented. We should table this motion so that the Agenda Charter Committee can more in-depth explore what the charter intended to make sure we have a commission that meets that spirit. Thank you.
Some confusion. Is it a motion to postpone or is it a motion to table?
Right.
I'm sorry, I misspoke.
So where exactly, back to Legislator O'Brien, where exactly are we now that we've heard two different versions?
Motion to recommit to the Agenda Charter Committee. And the reason that that's important is that I'm sure that the county attorney hasn't had an awful long time to consider this, and it may well be that his analysis is correct, but the actual language of the charter says represented by. And I know that in the past we've even had independent party caucuses of this legislature, and when we carry the banner of that party, I mean, my name appeared on the Independence Party last time. In my view, I represented the voters that voted for me on the Independence Party line. The language in the charter talks about represented by, and that's the nature of the concern here, Mr. President.
Okay, is there any other discussion at this time? If there's not, I'll move to a roll call. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr.
Legislator
President.
Andrews.
I rise to support the motion to commit. I think there's a very important question that's pending before us that I don't think, at least I don't believe was definitively disposed of this evening, because I have concerns. I mean, in the interpretation that apparently has been given regarding the composition of this commission, what if there were a registered Independence Party member sitting in the county legislature? Would he or she not have an appointment to the commission based on the interpretation that has been given by the county law department? Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. President, I've actually thought of that hypothetical, and I do believe a very strong argument could be made that would be the case.
That he or she would not have a representative on the
No,
commission?
just the opposite. That if there was a registered member of a third political party, I believe it could be argued that that person would be able to be a member of this commission.
Okay. I think at this point it is proper to commit this to the Agenda Charter Committee. I mean, I know, for example, for myself, as a member of the Working Families Party, that definition of member is perhaps slightly different than definition of member that we might have for Democratic or Republican Party. I, for example, am a dues-paying member of that political party. I'm allowed to participate in all of their political party processes and consider myself to be a member of the Working Families Party. So I feel whether or not I am enrolled in that political party is not at all what the charter requires, but that I should still, as a member of that party, as well as any other member of that political party, have a separate appointment to this redistricting commission. And I think that there are a lot of questions that should be looked into, and that perhaps a little more time would give us an opportunity to do that.
Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Baroth.
Actually, it's a follow-up question through the President to the representative from the County Law Department. You just stated that you believe it could be argued that, in fact, Representative Andrews' interpretation is correct. Would that be the position you would think is the correct position to argue?
Through you, Mr. President, if pressed, yes, I would say that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Seeing none, we'll vote on this. Go to roll call vote.
Mr. Quattro. Mr. O'Brien. Ms. Andrews. Mr. Antelli. Mr. Barker. Mr. Baroth. Mr. Beebe. Mr. Cassetti. Mr. Colby. Mr. Daniele. Mrs. Draw. Mr. Eckel. Mr. Esposito. Mr. Gamble. Mr. Gamina. Mr. Haney. Mr. Hanna. Mr. Hyder. Mr. Howland. Ms. Kaylee. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Monero. Mr. McCann. Mr. Rocco. Mr. Tucciarello. Mrs. Valerio. Mr. Yolovich. President Adair.
No.
12 to 16, motion fails.
It fails. Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Back to the main motion, it should go without saying, after months of trying to implore my colleagues, that I in no way, shape, or form intend to support this referral. I've been asked a lot recently why I'm putting so much energy into this issue by many of the people in this room and many of the people who I talk to on the street who typically are in favor of reforming this process. And it's not just about our district lines and how people are represented in their government, even though that should be enough. Fortunately, the politics will take care of itself, and you will all have an opportunity to go before voters and be judged on your actions in the very near future. But this is about how we operate, or in actuality fail to cooperate, in this government and virtually at all levels of government. Putting partisan politics and party above all else is endangering this county. It's exactly that attitude and the counterproductive partisan habits that have poisoned this honorable body and are allowing this majority to follow this administration while it leads us into financial ruin. I hope everyone in this body is paying very close attention to what's happening in our sister county of Nassau. It is our future if we don't step out of our partisan habits and work together to do something to change the direction. Last week I heard the county executive say, politics gives us an excuse not to govern, but taxpayers deserve better. I could not agree more. I respectfully ask her and all of you to look in the mirror. I urge you to do the right thing for the people of Monroe County, not the Monroe County Republican Party. Vote no to continuing politics as usual so that representation of the people can be returned to the people and we can begin the process of saving this county together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Cayley?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to give my feelings, a little bit of my opinion on what's happening tonight and what's happened over the past course of the few months. Next week is NISAC. I can't go. I wish I could, but I can't go. But I remember the first class that I took there in the Pelletier Institute, and it was on ethics in government. The first statement out of the presenter's mouth was, when they give you the answer, it's the way we've done it, status quo, don't accept it. And that is what we've been hearing for the last 3 months. It is not status quo. It is not to be accepted that we should just do it as it's been done. It's not correct to do things that way. And I will give you 2 examples of why. If it had been status quo, women would not be allowed in history to own property or let alone vote. If it were status quo, African Americans would not be allowed to own property, be free, or to vote. On and on and on. It is changing up. It is changing minds. And it is ethical to make small changes in a good direction. And I would just ask that you think about that for a while. It is not status quo, and that's what you're offering us. That's what you're offering the county of Monroe, status quo. Go back to ethics.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. I take an opportunity to explain my vote. While not a member of the Charter Committee, I did have an opportunity to observe the debate at Agenda Charter. And one of the arguments that came up was that we would be delegating our responsibility or abdicating our responsibility to an independent commission if we went with an independent commission. And it's really not a question of delegating our authority. The Charter requires that we appoint a commission, not that we draw the lines. And to suggest that we need to appoint a commission that will be controlled by one political party or another is absurd. In fact, the good government action for us to take would have been to appoint a nonpartisan commission. In rejecting the notion of an independent commission, what that does is defeat the expectation of those who would like us to act reasonably and in the best interest of the people of Monroe County. And accordingly, in my conscience, I have to vote no against this.
Thank you. Legislator Monroe.
Mr. President. I just want to remind my colleagues on both sides of the aisle that this isn't a Democratic or Republican issue, and that there are Republicans. I mean, actually, every Republican I've spoken to, Mr. President, has told me that they favor independent redistricting. The county Republican chair favors independent redistricting at the state level. And just to keep in mind that the public is on our side on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Quattro.
I know that at least Legislator O'Brien and I believe you too, Mr. President, perhaps even the clerk of the legislature had the opportunity to, at least have been presented with the draft report that Mr. Gregory was speaking tonight about in the public forum. I want to thank Mr. Gregory for doing that work. If you had the chance to read it, and I've read through it a couple of times now, you would have come to recognize the work certainly as basically a history lesson of redistricting in Monroe County, and not just from a political perspective, but also from the perspective of media coverage and so on and so forth. So I want to publicly thank on the record Mr. Gregory for doing that work. If that's the draft report, I really look forward to reading his final report with regards to the issue historically and actually in this county. We have a process here, Mr. President, that has been used successfully in Monroe County for years and years, that has not been partisan, that in fact has been bipartisan, has not been unethical, it has not been unfair, and it has produced outstanding results. I am proud to vote in favor of this issue tonight here before us, and I look forward to a bipartisan redistricting process that's going to represent all the people in this county. Thank you very much.
Is there any other discussion at this time? Seeing there's none, we'll move to a roll call vote on this.
Mr. Quattro. Yes. Mr. O'Brien. No. Ms. Andrews. No. Mr. Antelli. Yes. Mr. Barker. Yes. Mr. Baroth. No. Mr. Beebe. No. Mr. Cassetti. Yes. Mr. Colby. Yes. Mr. Daniele. Yes. Mrs. Draw. Yes. Mr. Eckel. No. Mr. Esposito. No. Mr. Gamble. No. Mr. Gamina. No. Mr. Haney. No. Mr. Hanna. No. Mr. Hyder. Mr. Howland. Yes. Ms. Kaylee. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Monero. Mr. McCann. Mr. Rocco. Mr. Tucciarello. Mrs. Valerio. Mr. Yolovich. President Adair.
Yes.
15-13, motion passes.
Let's move on to the next item.
Item number 2, referral 11-0004, accepting grant from New York State.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 3, referral 11-5, authorizing.
Moved by legislators Antelli, second by legislators Hannah and Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 4, referral 11-6.
Moved by legislator Antelli, second by legislators Hannah and Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there's no discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 5, referral 11-7, accepting grant from New York State.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 6, referral 11-8, accepting grant from New York State.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 7, referral 11-9, accepting grant from New York State Division.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 8, referral 11-10, accepting grant from New York State.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 9, referral 11-11, accepting grant from New York State.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing that there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 10, referral 11-12, accepting grant from New York State.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislators Valerio and legislator Draw. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 11, referral 11-13, accepting grant from.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 12, referral 11-14, accepting gift from New York.
Moved by legislator Hannah, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 13, referral 11-15, confirmation of reappointment.
Moved by legislator Yolovich, second by legislator Howland. Is there any discussion on this at this time? Seeing there is none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 14, referral 11-16.
Moved by legislator Valerio, second by legislators Cassetti and Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise briefly simply to commend through you the Parks Department for their follow-through on this issue. One of the first things I did upon coming to this body was to inquire with our Health Department, our Parks Department, as to what we were doing to deal with the water management and water quality issues at Durand Eastman Park. I'd like to thank them for following through on that years later and for keeping us updated along the way. I hope this project gets done expeditiously and successfully and that we see some good results. So thank you very much, Director Staub and the Parks Department.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Seeing there's no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 15, referral 11-17.
Moved by legislator Colby, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. President. From the discussion at Environment and Public Works, I have one remaining question that could not be answered at that committee meeting. Do we know what the tipping fee is that Waste Management is paying the town of Perrington for the landfill that they operate on the eastern county line, partly in the town of Perrington?
Through you, Mr. President, that is $3.20 per ton.
Through you, Mr. President, if Waste Management is paying $2.20 a ton to the town of Perrington, why should we pay $3.65 a ton, or something like 50% more at mill seat?
Through you, Mr. President, there's really two variables in that equation. There's the annual rate per ton as well as the maximum permitted volume. At High Acres Landfill, that maximum permitted volume or capacity is 80% greater than at mill seat. It's roughly 1 million tons per year, whereas mill seat is approximately 600,000 tons per year. So when you combine those two variables, the town of Perrington has the ability to receive significantly more than the town of Riga based on those two items.
With all due respect, Mr. President, I'm not sure what the volume should have to do with it. I mean, we're paying to dump tonnages, and we end up paying 50% more per ton than Waste Management is paying in Perrington. But further, Mr. President, I voted against this referral at Environment and Public Works. I'm going to vote for it this evening, although the last information does indeed trouble me. I'm glad to see, we need to realize that this is the first step in a long road to expanding the footprint of the Mill Seat landfill. My basic quandary remains, the basic concern I had at Environment and Public Works, and again at Ways and Means. The county every year loses substantial money in its solid waste fund. In the year 2009, which is the last year, at least that I've seen data for, the county lost $4.15 million in its solid waste fund. The amount of cash in the solid waste fund declined by $5.85 million in that year, $5,850,000. The solid waste fund has an unrestricted fund balance deficit at 12/31/09 of $1.7 million. The solid waste fund, Mr. President, is clearly on an unsustainable path. I will vote for this tonight because I was assured at the committee meetings that most of the increased payments and costs under this host agreement will be absorbed by waste management and not the county, although that is troubling in its own right, at least to me, because if waste management can afford to absorb those costs at mill seat, it leads me to believe that the contract that was struck with waste management, shall we say, was not the fairest from the county's standpoint. I would hope, Mr. President, that given the continued losses in the solid waste fund, I would hope, Mr. President, that either the Environment and Public Works Committee or the Ways and Means Committee would engage in a review of the solid waste fund with an eye to resolving this financial problem. It's an unsustainable financial problem. And I would hope that the administration would present to the respective committees in the near future the outline of a game plan for resolving this fiscal problem and enabling the solid waste fund to recover the losses that it has incurred and to operate at least on a break-even proposition going forward. Clearly, the pattern of fiscal operation of the solid waste fund, at least through 2009, and we haven't seen the 2010 numbers yet, has us on a course that can only lead to fiscal disaster. And I would hope that the committees and the county administration would address this problem in the very near future. But because I agree with the administration that we need to begin the process of moving into the tortuous process, and believe me, it is tortuous. I'm probably the only person in the room who was here when Mill Seat was created. And that was indeed a tortuous process over many years. I'm glad to see that we are beginning to move, because it will easily be a 5 or a 6 year process. But it is imperative, Mr. President, that we address the fiscal imbalances in the solid waste fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Colby.
Thank you. Just to clear up a few things, or before I understand things maybe more clear to everybody, through you, Mr. President, if we stayed on the original contract or a host agreement with RIGA that was formed when the landfill was originally formed, what would the tipping fee potentially be today or in the next 3 or 4 years? If I remember the figures, it's going well over $4, isn't that correct? If you use the 5% escalator that was originally in the original contract?
Through you, Mr. President, that is correct. That would escalate to 2018 over $4. In Amendment number 3, did call parties back to renegotiate the terms, and it did. If the parties did not reach agreement, it would have been capped off at $3.61.
So we've actually decreased the amount you could say that we've decreased the amount that the town would receive from what they originally made a deal with the administration that was there when they were forming that.
Through you, Mr. President, that is correct.
Over the years.
Yeah, in 2018, it would have been $4.84 per ton based on that escalator.
Okay. Also for you, Mr. President, is there other items or activities that take place in in the budget area besides the landfill that could be causing this deficit that Haney's alluding to? What other activities are in that budget line item?
Through you, Mr. President, all solid waste activities are within that enterprise fund.
So like recycling center and stuff like that is in there too?
Through you, Mr. President, that is correct.
And so some of those activities, and not so much the agreement that we are making with the town of Riga or with Waste Management, could be causing the deficit that is being alluded to here in these chambers tonight. Is that correct for you, Mr. President?
Through you, Mr. President, that is correct.
I think this proposal, and I'm glad to see that he realizes this is an important asset to this community, because ever since this landfill was opened, the cost of dumping the garbage in Monroe County went down significantly within 2 weeks. If you remember the history, we were looking at over $100 a ton at the time. Within 2 weeks, I looked up in the newspaper articles that my dad saved, because he was on the ledge at the time, and within 2 weeks, the landfill charges in the area went down $30 to $40 and has stabilized at a significantly lower price than it was then. So that's why this agreement might look awful beneficial to Riga, but if you look at it as a community as a whole, that landfill has benefited every citizen in this county by a large sum of savings of disposing of our waste in an ecologically, environmentally sound way. And so that's why I think we should continue this and expand the landfill at the present location.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Haney?
Mr. President, I just want to make clear that I did not mean in any way to imply that the mill seat landfill was not a good idea 20 years ago and that it did not have numerous positive impacts, because Mr. Colby is correct. We were paying bandit prices to dispose of refuse before the mill seat landfill existed. And nor did I mean to imply that it's the host agreement necessarily that is causing the deficits in the solid waste fund. Whatever is causing the deficits in the solid waste fund, my point was that it would be my hope that whatever is causing those deficits, that the Ways and Means Committee and the Environment and Public Works Committee with the administration would investigate and put together a rational plan for curing those deficits.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Seeing there's none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 16, referral 11-18, authorizing.
Moved by Legislator Antelli, second by Legislators Draw and Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 17, referral 11-19, authorizing contract.
Moved by Legislator Draw, second by Legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 18, referral 11-20, accepting grant.
Moved by Legislator Draw, second by Legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there's no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 19, referral 11-21.
Moved by Legislator Colby, second by Legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there's no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 20, referral 11-22.
Moved by legislator Colby, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 21, referral 11-23.
Moved by legislator Colby, second by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 22, referral 11
Moved by legislator Colby, second by legislator Gamina. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 23, referral 11-24, confirmation of...
Moved by legislator Cassetti, seconded by legislator Colby. Is there any discussion at this time? Legislator Lightfoot.
To you, Mr. President, I want to thank you for recognizing me as I get ready to speak to this particular confirmation. Being one of the two members appointed by County Executive Maggie Brooks in this body to the Airport Authority, quite naturally there are some really troubling issues there that we have gotten over and we're moving forward. However, I do have some questions to the administration concerning this confirmation. In looking at this whole situation in light of, I'm more so in favor of there being an all-out search for this position. However, that not being the case, I do have some questions. First to you, Mr. President, to the administration, does the proposed director have a degree in aviation management or public business administration? To you, Mr. President, to the administration.
Through the President, I do not. I have a doctorate in jurisprudence.
Okay, all right. And to you, Mr. President, to administration, or to our person here, Mrs. Walsh, does the proposed, I guess I should be, I didn't realize I was going to be talking to you, but do you have an airport management experience? And I want to make this for the record to you, Mr. President, that this is in no light against Mrs. Walsh or anything. This is truly just a matter of people. I was one of the only one on the board that had issues with this particular situation. So quite naturally, I received a lot of phone calls from constituents. I received a lot of phone calls from people who use our services. And, a lot of questions were asked, and I believe that, it's necessary that these things be properly vented. It has nothing to do with anyone personally, but then I've also seen information concerning other airport directors and aviation's requirements, and I have in my hand job duties for Commissioner of Aviation from the City of Syracuse Department of Aviation, and there's some very specific requirements that are asked of aviator directors. So, quite naturally, I'm venting this out now. So, to you, Mr. President, does the proposed director have any airport management experience?
Through the President, I have extensive managerial experience. During the Public Works Committee, we discussed that very advertisement that you're reading from as to qualifications. I've been a manager here at the county for over 10 years, and although not particular to airports and airplanes, I know how to direct a department.
So to answer the question, you don't have any airport management experience, do you, Mr. President?
Through the President, I have management experience.
Okay. To you, Mr. President, does the proposed director have any experience with FAA regulations? Do you, Mr. President, to the administration?
Through the President, I don't have any experience with FAA regulations, but I certainly have much experience with reading various laws, statutes, and regulations and interpreting them and applying them to whatever situation is before me.
Okay. And last question, to you, or actually, second from last question, to you, Mr. President, to the administration, does the proposed director have any experience in the airline route planning?
Through the President, I do not have any of that specific experience.
Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, was anyone else considered for the position of airport director?
Mr. President, the answer to that question is no.
Okay, to you, so I want to explain my vote on this particular confirmation. I will be voting no for this particular confirmation. Again, it's not a personal thing. I think in lieu of the discoveries that we've had with the last airport director, and from my understanding, from what I'm hearing from past, there was very little experience from last airport director in lieu that he was a nice guy, and not taking that away from him. But it led to possibly the situations that we've seen in past. So I have issues with the fact that this was not put out to bid. I think for an extreme situation like this, that this position should have been put out to bid, and more people should have been allowed to apply for this position. And possibly people who may have many of these qualifications that we've asked on tonight. So for that, I rise to explain my vote for no for the confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you, welcome to Ms. Walsh tonight. I guess it was just 6 weeks or so ago, we had what some might describe as a long and arduous budget discussion that you were very much involved with, and who knew that 6 weeks later we'd be having this conversation. But I think that did give us an opportunity to know you in a way that was somewhat a unique opportunity, and I am certainly left with the impression that you are an extremely intelligent and a very capable person, and very competent, and may well give the airport the best opportunity to put a new, fresh a fresh beginning on moving forward with the kind of airport that the community deserves. And so I congratulate you on that. The nature of my inquiry is where we've all served on boards with executive directors, or many of us in this room have, and I want to explore how you perceive the relationship between you and the airport board. As the Public Authorities Law provides that board members shall execute direct oversight of the chief executive and senior management in the effective and ethical management of the authority. And I guess my first question would be whether you have confidence that this board can fulfill that function with you, and if you could describe how you envision your relationship with the board a little.
Through the President, I'm not familiar with the individuals, most of the individuals on the board, but I look forward to becoming more familiar with them. I would certainly hope that we would have a very collaborative effort moving forward in growing and taking an airport that already operates at a very high level and moving it forward and continuing to improve it.
Right, and I appreciate that, and but in light of the public authorities' clear oversight responsibility of the board, many of us were somewhat taken aback to see the board chairman's reaction to the termination of the airport's internal auditor. The board, of course, had previously, in previous years, approved the contract with the internal auditor, but the board chairman said, if the county executive says the contract is being terminated, whatever she says, I accept. I'm just wondering if you believe that the members of the airport authority should exercise independent oversight of its operations, and that you serve, ultimately at the pleasure of the board. And again, do you have confidence that this board, in light of comments like that, is the right board, for the times that we face now?
Through the President, although I understand your remarks, I don't believe that goes to my qualifications for this position. As I stated, I look forward to working with this board and moving the airport forward in a positive way.
Right. I guess I'm just trying to understand how you will relate with the board, and kind of along the same lines, the airport authority's own bylaws indicate that the members of the board shall establish the policies they deem necessary to promote honest and ethical conduct by the authority's officers and employees. And on or about January 18th, the county executive presented the members of the airport authority board with a list of changes to the code of ethics. and without questioning the wisdom of those changes, which I applaud the county executive on, and I think are right, is it your view that the board should be more engaged in the establishment of policies at the airport?
Through the President, I believe in my leadership style is one of collaboration. So I believe that when we take many good minds and put them together and vent ideas and decisions that need to be made, we come up with the best solution. I believe that that works for those who are on my level and above me, as well as down to line workers, that we need to take into consideration elements from stakeholders at all levels. So I certainly would embrace anyone who wanted on that board who wishes to become involved in discussions around how to do a better job of what we already do quite well.
Thank you, and I do think that your legal training will serve you well. I may be one of the few in this chamber that believes lawyers in high places isn't necessarily a bad thing. With respect to just a couple of specific questions on actions taken since you've been the director at the airport, subject to our confirmation, I've had some inquiries about the normal communications contract being canceled. Because what was reported was that there was one missed payment, or somebody at least reported that on a news station, that one late payment, although it's a sizable payment. And I'm just wondering if there were issues, and not that you have to specify the issues, but were there issues beyond one late payment that led to the termination of that contract in your role as airport administrator?
Through the President, again, I respect your question, but I do believe that the purview of this body this evening is to determine whether I'm qualified to act as the Director of Aviation.
And I would concur, President, as just as a matter of order here, that's what we're here to do. We're not here to discuss issues that were well vetted in the media or actions that were taken. But we're here to discuss Ms. Walsh's qualification to serve as the director of the Greater Rochester International Airport.
I concur, Mr. President. I'm not trying. I wasn't trying to interfere with the duties. I was just trying to get some insight into how Ms. Walsh operates as the airport director, and thought that might lend some insight into it, because it did seem like there's some questions out there still begging to be answered. So I'll leave that to you maybe to address in the future. And similarly, there's been some questions about Mr. Mancini's role as treasurer out there. But I won't belabor that report. As I started out by saying, I think you are a particularly capable person, and I think you take your responsibilities seriously and with a great deal of reflection and intelligence, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Through the President, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. President. With due respect to what the acting director and what the majority leader think should be in the purview of this body to determine her qualifications, I think the unique circumstances of having been thrust into such a tumultuous situation at the Airport Authority give us the benefit of actually seeing actions in your role as director and having that help us determine whether or not we want to approve your confirmation. So I don't think those questions are out of order at this time. However, I will take a different tact at this point. I'd like to follow up on some of the questions from Legislator Lightfoot. Through Mr. President, the administration, I believe you stated that there were no other candidates considered. That's sort of shocking to me, given the gravity of what's happening at the Airport Authority. I'd like to ask through you, Mr. President, to the administration, why were no other candidates considered?
Mr. President, I rise with the same objection. We're here to discuss the qualifications of our future airport director. Discussions of process of how the candidate was selected are inappropriate.
I don't think they're inappropriate at all, Mr. President. Mr. President, we are here today to confirm a director of aviation. I think we should have some enlightenment into the county administration's process to selecting the nominee before us today.
Legislator Esposito, I think, let's take a step here for a second, okay? It is within the prerogative of this administration and the county executive to appoint a person for director of aviation.
Correct.
We are here today to confirm that person. We don't need to know, at this point. If you wanted to ask them that question, I think that they would probably be, but I don't think that's germane to what we're doing tonight with Ms. Walsh. And I think that we got to keep that questioning in that way.
I appreciate that opinion.
Thank you.
But it's also my elected prerogative to question the referrals that come before this committee, and it is our responsibility to approve or deny confirmations.
Correct. No
I think
question.
that's a very germane question, is to understand to what extent this administration looked for the best possible candidate to clean up the mess at the airport.
I will stand with what I've said before. I really believe that at this point we are here, and it is exactly to confirm the appointment. The Director of Aviation, we are not here to ask what kind of line of questioning the administration went through to figure out who they were going to appoint.
I find it very troubling that this administration did not look further, and I find it even more troubling that this body doesn't seem to think that matters. I'd like to ask a question related to the vacancy that would exist, or it exists already, given the acting status of the nominee before us in her previous job. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration.
Same objection, Mr. President.
Is it not germane that if we approve this nominee as airport director that we have a vacancy in the budget director's office?
In the finance department are going to be met. It's up to the prerogative of the county executive to make sure that that happens appropriately, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the qualifications of our candidate for airport director.
Legislator Esposito, I want you to ask questions, but can we keep them to why, can we keep the questions to Ms. Walsh and ask her, the questions directly? We're going off on a tangent here, and I just don't get why we've got to bring in the budget director and all that. So
because that's the position she's vacating. It's a very important position in this body.
It absolutely is, and I would like to make sure that every one of the 29 legislators here gets an opportunity to ask questions of her for what she's doing, how she's going to go about doing it, the qualifications and things like that. You can ask questions about her. I do not believe that at this point it's necessary to find out why we went through the position of figuring out, well, now what are we going to do about it? But it's not.
Well,
it just isn't.
Fine. I understand
Okay.
you have an
Great.
opinion as the majority leader, and I will withdraw
I'm the
further
president.
questions in respect for that opinion.
Okay, I'm the president.
And
Okay.
I referred to both of you, I believe.
No, you didn't.
I believe I did. But
We'll keep
the
it
point
that
of
way,
this
okay?
is simply I'm withdrawing my questions, and I intend to follow the lead of Legislator Lightfoot in voting against this appointment for various reasons, not the least of which is the lack of oversight that this body continually does not exercise over this administration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise to explain my vote on this matter. I was considering voting in favor of this nominee before us until it seems that the majority caucus has decided that, oversight of and doing due diligence that's part of our purview is apparently not allowable in this chamber. So for that reason, I'm voting against this measure.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Cayley.
He looked that way. He said
You're up.
Sorry, Mr. President, you looked in the other direction when you said my name, so.
You're up.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, I just wanted to explain my vote. I will be approving the appointment this evening. I've had the opportunity to get to know Ms. Walsh, and I do respect the work that she's done here. And I expect that she will work to the best of her ability, and then when she has questions, to ask them in good counsel. And so I will be approving the appointment. However, I will register my disapproval as to the non-seeking or not seeking beyond the immediate administrative body. And I think that when we are dealing with a position this important, that we do need to look outside rather than just in. However, I will approve this evening, and I am sure that you will work your best. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislator Burroff.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
I have a question through the President to the nominee, and welcome, by the way. I would just point out that you actually have more experience in this body than I do, so I'm looking up to you for some guidance here. I want to ask about some of the experience you have in regards to ethics and ethics training. I note from your resume you are a member of the Monroe County Board of Ethics. I'm sure in your 10 years of experience in management you also have had other trainings or interactions with conflict of interest processes or perhaps ethic boards or things along those lines. And so what I would like to ask you through the President is how do you think those past experiences will best serve you in the environment that you have recently entered and that many are concerned faces certain ethical challenges?
Through the President, that's a great question. I'm an attorney, and as an attorney, there's a requirement that we, on a biannual basis, receive training, and a portion of that training is mandated to be in ethics. So, unlike other members of the community and professionals, for the past, more than a decade, I've been engaged in formal ethics training. So ethics training is at the forefront of what I do. Also serving on the ethics board, I'm very sensitive to ethical issues in that individuals who are employed at the county come before me and the other members of the board if they have concerns about voids in ethical behavior, and we take those things under consideration and make decisions about them. So ethics is something that I am aware of and I interact with on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the President, if I may follow up, I'm pleased to hear, and in fact I expected to hear, your interest and concern along the lines of ethical training, particularly for yourself. However, the process, the examples you provided, at least the tone, was it was reactive in nature. If someone has a concern, they may approach you. Would you perhaps take on a more proactive or assertive approach to ethical concerns or cultures that you may encounter, not just in this position, but in any position you may find yourself in?
Through the President, certainly, we have determined that there will be some ethics training going forward for all county employees, for the authority board members. In addition to that, my experience in HR as the Chief Labor Counsel allowed me to get involved in a more proactive way when there were issues concerning behaviors of others that were questionable. So I guess training and awareness at the airport and throughout the county is something that we're looking forward to do and improve.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just rise to say a few comments. I do certainly wish that we had an opportunity this evening to explore a few more areas that were, as I would describe, shut down for questioning, especially regarding Ms. Walsh and how she would view her relationship with the board at the airport, as well as other questions about why this position wasn't advertised more broadly, as it is such an important position to fill, and perhaps that would have yielded additional applicants, and perhaps Ms. Walsh still would have emerged as the best candidate, but I think that we should have had an opportunity, or should have done that. And I also would have a question regarding why the appointment is being made as the permanent director of the airport instead of perhaps as an acting director, as I think we have done it that way in the past. But having said that, I too have gotten to know Ms. Walsh in the past few years, especially in her capacity as budget director. I hope that she will do a good job at the airport, and I will vote tonight in the affirmative for her confirmation, but do hope that we will be able to have extended conversations from this point going on about some of the other areas that have been raised this evening. Thanks.
thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing there is no other discussion, all those in favor? I've got a roll call vote. Let's move to a roll call vote.
Dr. Quattro? Mr. O'Brien? Ms. Andrews? Mr. Antelli? Mr. Barker? Mr. Baroth? Mr. Beebe? Mr. Cassetti? Mr. Colby? Mr. Daniele? Mrs. Straw? Mr. Eckel? Mr. Esposito? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Hyder? Mr. Holland? Ms. Kaylee? Mr. Lee? Mr. Lightfoot? Mr. Monero? Mr. McCann? Mr. Rocco? Mr. Tucciarello? Mrs. Valerio? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
23-5, motion is adopted.
Congratulations. Before I move to, I'm actually going to move into unfinished business, but before I say what I want to say, Legislator Cassetti brought to my attention tonight that someone that we know, I think all of us know very well in this chambers, recently had an accident, and I'm putting you on the spot, Legislator Cassetti, if you wouldn't mind letting the legislators know exactly what happened.
Yes, I guess maybe about 2.5 weeks ago, Sister Grace was involved in a car accident in the southern tier, and she was in the hospital for a while in, I believe it was in Sayre, Pennsylvania, but she's now presently up at the Sisters of Mercy Mother House on Blossom Road. However, she, I guess, had some quite serious injury to her left hand, in which I guess it was broken in many locations, and, you know, pins and things of that nature were put in there, and they actually had to do a skin graft as well. So, and this is from Rita Lewis filling me in, so I'm sure that Sister Grace would appreciate if anybody got in touch and wished her well, and I'm sure she'll be back to being doing her good work very soon.
Thank you, Legislator Cassetti. Is there any unfinished business to come before this body tonight? Legislator O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one, if you could clarify for us with respect to the Monroe Community Sports Center Corporation, there was some confusion about whether or not our two legislative appointments had been filled, and I had submitted the name of Richard Beebe, and I'm not sure if there's been another name from the Republican side, and whether we have a fully seated board there.
I believe we do. Legislator Quattro is on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Ready. Seeing there is no other business, Legislator Quattro.
Mr. President, I move that this honorable body stand adjourned until Tuesday, March 8th, 2011, at 6 p.m.